Yeah, and as I already mentioned, our stage today is called Ways Toward New Cooperation. And it's, I don't think I have to explain why we definitely had to invite our friends from the UK onto this stage today. So I'm very happy that Jenny Hall is here with me today. She's from the Department for Digital Culture, Media and Sport from the UK government and is Deputy Director of the International Data Unit. And she'll be talking us through the UK perspective on data, especially on the global scale, basically, because a lot has been happening recently. And with the Brexit, I think we are all eager to hear, Jenny, what you have to tell us today. So thanks for being here.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you for such a warm welcome. And I hope you can hear me okay. Do let me know if you struggle at any point, but I'm absolutely delighted to be here. And as you say, I was asked just to share a few reflections from the UK on how it feels to be working on data policy at the moment. And exciting is definitely one of the words, and quite busy. So let me tell you a little bit more about what we're doing, and then it would be great to have a discussion. So just over a week ago, we celebrated the first anniversary of the UK's National Data Strategy, which is a central pillar of the government's wider ambition to create a thriving, fast-growing digital sector in the UK, underpinned by public trust. Those colleagues who were at this conference last year may remember one of my colleagues from the department talking about the launch of that strategy. So we've had a really busy year getting that launched and implemented. And for those who haven't seen it, I mean, the sort of headline approach is around a core belief that data really should be an asset, and there are huge opportunities to how we use data, both domestically, by ensuring that data is appropriately available within the government and public sector in particular, but also internationally by championing the international flow of data. And as Rebecca mentioned, that's my area of work and my team's area of work, so something that I will focus on with you today. And championing that flow of data is one of the core missions of that strategy. In today's interconnected world, it's absolutely essential to be able to exchange data securely across borders. And of course, as everyone here today will know, data not only drives global supply chains, trade and development, but also allows for enhanced international cooperation between countries, including on law enforcement and national security issues. So as a leader in digital and tech, the UK is really keen to embrace the opportunity ahead of us to be a force for good in the digital world, to shape global thinking on innovative data use and the tangible benefits that data can deliver. So whether you see us agreeing ambitious data provisions in our trade negotiations or cooperating with our G7 partners on data free flow with trust, which I'll say a little bit more about in a second, we're really keen to facilitate those cross-border data flows and work to remove unnecessary barriers. At the same time, we're of course seeking to maintain and promote high data protection standards. So my other piece of news for those who may have missed it is just a couple of weeks ago now, the UK launched a data reform consultation. And what this means within the UK system is when the government publishes proposals and invites comment, reaction and input, both domestically and from international partners, over about a 10-week period. So the consultation is open now and I think closes sometime around the sort of middle of November. And what we're looking to do is to get views from partners and experts and interested parties on how we can improve our data protection regime and how we can build on key elements of the UK GDPR, how we can work to make it more ambitious, more pro-growth and innovation friendly, but as I said, while remaining underpinned by those secure and trustworthy privacy standards. We think that improved data sharing is a key stepping stone to helping to deliver more agile, effective and efficient public services. So that's what you'll see the UK government thinking about, but also thinking about cementing the UK's leading role on science and technology, not least as we emerge, hopefully, from the coronavirus pandemic. And you'll also see material in those proposals on easing burdens on businesses, looking to reform the Information Commissioner's Office, our data protection regulator here in the UK, and again, supporting that wider innovation in the data ecosystem. So really encourage people to take a look at that consultation if you have time, and to let us know what you think. Alongside that consultation, we also recently announced the countries which the UK will be prioritising for our first round of UK data adequacy assessments. In case you missed it, those are Australia, Colombia, Dubai, Singapore, the Republic of Korea, and the United States. That's the first set of partners that we will be targeting for assessments. There will be others. We're looking at potential future opportunities with a range of other international partners, including Brazil, India, Indonesia, and Kenya, and we'll have more to say on those soon. But hopefully you can see that those countries present the UK with a real range of possibilities from an adequacy perspective, spanning the globe and reflecting the scale of the opportunity that we really want to embrace at this point in time. And let me finally then just say a word on some of the wider international work that we're doing, because we very much, despite Brexit, we very much see ourselves operating within that global ecosystem and collaborating really actively with our international partners to help shape that system. You may have seen during the G7 presidency that the UK held this year, we have continued the data free flow with trust work that our Japanese colleagues started at the 2019 G20 meeting. And we have taken that forward with a tangible programme of events and action for governments and regulators to take together. So you may have seen the digital and technology ministers of the G7 signed off a roadmap for cooperation on data free flow with trust, which sets out those areas of areas for cooperation designed to make progress together as like-minded allies on this agenda. We've got a really busy autumn of events delivering on a range of those issues, including building evidence on the impact of data localization measures. We had our first event hosted by Tech UK last week on that, which I'm sure is available on the internet if people would like to look for it. And we're also looking at deepening regulatory cooperation and cooperation on data governance. And the UK's Information Commissioner hosted an event for all G7 data regulators earlier this month, which was a great success. And then further, I think next week we're picking up some workshops on best practice on data sharing across some priority sectors. So lots more to do through the course of this autumn, and really, as I say, focused on those tangible actions taken together to see real progress. We're also delighted that through our G7 presidency, we were able to get Australia and the Republic of Korea to sign up to that roadmap, and they're working really closely with us and our G7 partners on those events. And I think that really shows what we can achieve together as like-minded partners to support the removal of barriers to data flows that I talked about earlier, and to make the most of those opportunities that data exchange presents. So we look forward to handing over our presidency at the end of the year to Germany, to our German colleagues, and to supporting them to continue the dialogue on international data flows should they wish to. But we're not quite done. So before the end of the year, there's one other sort of major event that we'll be hosting, which is the Future Tech Forum in November, which we're very much hoping will be in person, but of course that depends on the COVID situation. But this is a conversation, goes beyond data actually, is about how digital technologies can support open societies in the digital and data-driven age. So the forum will create a space for frank and open and future-facing conversations for governments, academics and industry to address some of those shared public policy challenges. So, and it will have data as a key element of that, specifically that kind of data as a force for good and how we build public trust as a real priority for us. So you can expect to hear a little bit more from the UK government on that very soon. So I hope that gives you a sense of what we're up to. Lots to do, a really exciting time to be working on data policy, huge amounts of collaboration, both with our European partners and the rest of the world. But let me pause there, Rebecca, in case there are any key areas that you wanted to dive into in a bit more detail.
Yes, indeed. There are. You touched upon so many important issues, actually. But maybe we'll start with the UK-EU data relationship. I would be very interested in hearing how do you see that future, especially considering that a few of the changes that were proposed for the UK data environment are kind of, yeah, they're different from the GDPR, and as we all know, the adequacy decision has a strict sunset clause. So yeah, what do you see in the future?
Yeah, great question. Well, I mean, I should start by saying that, look, we very, very much welcomed the EU's adequacy decisions for the UK, which I think rightly recognise the UK's high data protection standards and enabled what we acknowledge is such an important flow of data from the EU and the EEA to the UK. I should also say that the UK has legislated at the moment to ensure that the free flow in the other direction from the UK to the EU countries also continues. So that remains, that's very welcome, remains very important. But it was always clear the UK now controls our own data protection laws and regulations. What's also clear, and I hope what you've heard sort of loud and clear from me today, is we intend to continue to operate a really high quality regime with high data protection standards at its heart, but that also promotes growth and innovation. You've also heard me say today that this is about reform of the GDPR, reform of the system. This is not us starting from scratch. We are looking at how we can make it work better. And we really look forward, as I said, to engaging with partners and stakeholders on that, and with the EU, of course, as part of that. I note that you, of course, as we will all know, doing things differently. The adequacy assessments don't say that you have to do things in exactly the same way. They say that you need to achieve the same outcomes. And I think, you know, from our conversations and our work with our very close EU partners, we very much share the intention to maintain high data protection standards, and we very much want to see data flows between our two areas. So there's real kind of shared ambition there and shared perspective, and that's very much at the heart of what we're doing. I think if just touching on a little bit wider than that, because of course our relationship with the EU on data goes beyond that kind of adequacy assessment. We of course signed the Trade and Cooperation Agreement in December, which you may note includes language on data flows provisions, some good ambitions there that we're also working very closely with them on. And of course, looping back to what I touched on a second ago, our work at the G7 this year wouldn't have been possible without the EU and the great input and cooperation we had from them there, both on the data track, but also some of the wider digital and tech track. So I think in summary, you know, a real relationship of equals, but a real open and sharing relationship, and really keen to continue engaging is certainly how we see things from where we sit.
Is it also part of the data reform consultation that you mentioned earlier? Because I guess our audience will be very interested to hear more about that, because I already got a glimpse, but I don't think anybody has. So maybe you can elaborate a bit more on what fields you are exploring there, what options are on the table, and what solutions you're basically thriving to achieve with the data reform in itself.
Yes, absolutely. Although, forgive me if I just stick to the headlines, as the reform proposals are about 150 pages long. So, so I would encourage people to dive into a bit more of the detail in their own time. But yes, so there are 5 broad areas, or the kind of proposals are divided up into 5 broad areas. The first is on research and innovation. So again, with a particular sense of, are there lessons that we've learned from the coronavirus pandemic and how we've responded and kind of enabled data sharing through that, for example? But more broadly, how can we really encourage and support scientific research and broader innovation while maintaining those high data protection standards? There are proposals around reducing the burdens on businesses. So this comes to the point I was saying on how can we achieve the same outcomes, so the same levels of data protection standards, but that mean we don't, you know, inadvertently and unfairly burden particularly smaller businesses. We make sure that they can achieve the same ends through different means. There are proposals in there on improving public services. So some of the content I mentioned earlier on data sharing to enable the effective delivery of public services as a government is very important. to us. What else? The Information Commissioner's Office, so looking at how we reform and make sure that our data protection regulator is best set up and best able to deal with emerging technologies and changes in the way that we operate, and is kind of really fit for purpose. And then our final area is on the cross-border data flows. So the stuff I talked about in my presentation, but how can we ensure that we are making the most of global data flows, underpinning trade and building new relationships with countries around the world. So those are the 5 broad areas that you'll see us focusing on. I really want to emphasize that these are proposals for discussion and consultation. So we really do want to hear people's views on this, and we won't automatically be bringing these proposals into effect. The way the process works is we open full consultation and want to hear a range of views and engage with interested parties, and then the government will respond next spring. So those are the sorts of timelines that we're working through. But overall, I hope if you do have time to look at it, and if you're interested, I hope what you see is an attempt to make sure that our data protection laws are agile, adaptable, future-friendly, and that we're really taking this opportunity to make sure that they are so, and that they reflect the modern world that we live in. So would really, really welcome thoughts from those on the line today.
Thank you. And I think because you mentioned international data transfers and data flows is one of the cornerstones of the data reform consultation as well. You mentioned earlier that there are discussions about adequacy decisions from you guys, so from the UK to strategic partners, basically the US and many more. How will that work exactly? How will you manage those partnerships and the international data transfers? From your point of view, because for me it's absolutely fascinating, because we are, as you well know, we worked so closely together for so many years in the European Union, and now you kind of apply the same rules, but not from the Union perspective. So I'm very eager to hear more about that as well.
Yes, of course, and it's new for us too. So we'll be happy to keep talking about this as well. But I mean, look, now that the UK has left the EU, these are powers that we have inherited. So the adequacy making powers, the transfers regime, incorporated within our domestic legislation. So we now have the opportunity to think about where are those important relationships for us. Oh, apologies, that's my computer buzzing at me. Where are those important relationships? Where are the strategic relationships, the trading relationships, where we think there will be most value? But also crucially, where do we think prospective partners have good data protection laws that will warrant us starting to undertake an adequacy assessment? So that's kind of where we're at the moment, having identified some of those early priorities, and that isn't a list that is set in stone. We will, of course, keep it under review as we go forward. And the work really starts now. So it's now about starting to assess those countries' regimes, to put them through a process that I think would look pretty familiar to colleagues in the EU, in terms of assessing whether those standards are sufficiently high and whether we can kind of make those agreements. So, being named as a priority in those assessments starting doesn't automatically qualify. There will now be some really detailed technical and, of course, legal work to determine those decisions. But I think hopefully it gives a sense of the level of ambition and the level of, we think that. Coming back to the conversation, the first question you asked me, with the EU, we think that data adequacy and the free flow of data is a really positive thing. And linking to the G7 work, we think that ensuring that data flows underpinned by that trust, and in this case, underpinned by a really clear assessment that data protection standards will be maintained as data flows across borders. That's absolutely what we're after here. So this is new for us. We are really just starting, but I think it gives you a sense of the level of ambition that we are hoping to achieve. And perhaps one of my colleagues leading some of that work could come back and talk to you about it in due course, and we've got a few of them under our belt. But that's certainly what we're aiming for at this point in time.
Maybe just a quick follow-up question on that issue, because especially regarding the data flows between the UK and the US, and also, of course, the EU and the US, as you well know, there are ongoing negotiations between the EU side and the US side. We talked about that at length already today and also yesterday. And for me, it will be also interesting to hear what do you see those negotiations having an impact on your determinations and your your discussions basically for the adequacy for UK US?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, we know that the Commission and our US government colleagues are in very, very close conversations and negotiations at this point. We're monitoring that really closely and obviously with great interest. But then we will also be looking to work with our US counterparts as well. So I think if you'll forgive me for not going into huge detail for talks that are ongoing, but I think, look, you can safely say we're very much watching the EU and US process very closely and with great interest. And we will, of course, then reflect any of that in our own conversations with our US colleagues, who we have named as a real priority for us to find a way forward and to make an adequacy assessment if we can. So yes, very much live conversations in that area at the moment.
Finding a way forward is an excellent phrase here, because what is also one very important aspect of the whole discussions, especially surrounding international or transatlantic data flows, is that we basically all agree how essential free data flow is when it comes to the global economy and well working and successful and thriving as society also. So we all agree on that, but I guess what you and I and all of us here today often realize is that it's when you're talking about international data flows and adequacy and standards and requirements, the discussion is so often only about the differences that exist in the different part of the world, and also in Europe, basically. And maybe as you have a different and a special perspective now on the issue. Do you have any ideas how we can move past that, basically, to really enable cooperation and global data flows again?
I mean, what a great question, and I wish I had a clear answer, but it's a huge priority for us. This is a real priority, and I think, you know, one of the key reflections for us this year as we've gone through our G7 presidency is exactly what you've just said, like just how much we share and how similar our perspectives are as a set of like-minded nations, particularly in the G7, but I think more broadly as well, and just how important it is to engage, to collaborate, to build consensus with those who hold similar values and similar objectives and who are seeking to achieve similar outcomes, even if the methods are slightly different. So I think hopefully that's very much what we are trying to achieve through the work we're doing at the G7, a group of democratic, open, outward-looking societies. And we're hopeful that if we can build real consensus in that forum, and then continue to build out these relationships that I've talked about bilaterally, and of course through other fora that we're very active in, whether it's the OECD or a range of other places, that feels to us like a good way of starting to build some of that collective understanding and collective ambition in this space. We'll also circle back around to this. I think it's also important to situate the data protection and the kind of privacy conversation within that broader digital conversation, and that kind of brings us back to the Future Tech Forum that the UK will be hosting in November. That will be very much looking at how can tech work for the benefit of open societies. Again, trying to find those like-minded values together and trying to sort of build consensus and to deepen relationships with partners and allies around the world, and to try and find some of those shared solutions. And I wish I could sit here today and tell you that we have the magic answer. We don't, but this is exactly the sort of work that we really want to prioritise, and that we are certainly looking to take forward in all of our work going forward. So that's certainly that kind of values-based shared assessment of what we're trying to achieve is really what we're thinking about.
So, Jenny, what I took from all of your elaborations, and thank you first of all for sharing your views on the matter. It's absolutely essential and important for us to keep the cooperation going. Basically, how important you are as a partner to EU companies, and what I took from what you just said is that basically you will try to reform GDPR to make it a bit more future-proof, I think was the word that you used. I think we will be looking very closely how you do that, not because of the adequacy decision, or not only because of the adequacy decision, but also because, as you know, there has been an ongoing discussion in the EU as well, whether we need a reform of the GDPR and how it could be done, and whether it can be done at all. So what you guys do is basically something we will absolutely be following and will be very interested in. So I guess most of us will be looking into the data reform consultation as well, because as you mentioned, there are many important aspects in there that also drive the discussions in the EU. And yes, I think I mean, we do have 3.5 years left on this adequacy decision. I think there will be a process starting to renew it. We all hope it will be started in time, because we have seen how difficult the discussions were surrounding the final Brexit date, basically, because none of us wanted data flows to be stopped between the EU and the UK, and the adequacy decision really just came in time to that not be happening. So yeah, I think there will be a close communication between us all. I'm really looking forward to keeping the cooperation and the communication open, the discussion constructive, because as I think we all agree on, it's absolutely essential that we as close partners stay and stick together in the global data economy as well as in trade. So Jenny, maybe there's we have 1 minute left. Is there something you want to see maybe for the last 3 months of the G7 presidency or the upcoming year? I don't know. Is there something that you're really looking forward to, you want to achieve?
Yeah, so I think really landing these final G7 events for us, making sure we get some really good engagement. A lot of the events are designed around producing evidence and discussion documents and providing a platform for further discussion and consideration. So if we can manage to get those right in the next 3 months' time, both in terms of having those conversations, but also setting up that future trajectory. As I mentioned, we'll of course speak very closely with our German government counterparts about their ideas and ambitions for the G7 next year. So I think that's kind of front and center of our mind, how we build on the roadmap, how we ensure things don't just come to a stop at the end of this year, how we continue this conversation, how we create the right forums, the right ways to have those conversations. That's front and center of our mind. So if we can manage to do that in the next 3 months, then I'll be very happy.
Perfect. There's one last question in the chat. We don't have time to answer, but I want to read it anyway. And maybe, Jenny, we will all take this question with us and discuss at a later date. So to follow up on EU, UK, US data transfer, would you be interested in having a tripartite deal here? That's a very interesting thought. I'll be thinking about that. I think we all will. Jenny, for now, thank you so much for taking the time today. Let's stay in touch, and I hope to see you soon again.
Thank you so much, and absolutely. Thank you for having me.